Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences from some of the greatest coaches in the world. I'm Michael Kurkowski, so grateful for you joining me today. And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to support the show. All right, let's dive in. Here we go. And we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strength Connection podcast. Matt and Alfred, thanks so much for joining me, man. Super grateful to have you.
We're excited to be on.
Thanks for having us, brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, three guys in black hats. As I said, we didn't even coordinate it. So we're already on good chemistry going forward. But I really like what you guys are doing with your podcast, Full Fueled. You know, got a chance to dive into a few of the episodes, really interesting conversations. And, you know, I love talking with guys like you who are really looking to not just, find that foundational strength, but really trying to level up, that term optimization, which I think is such an interesting word. I want to dive into it a little bit more with you guys as we go, kind of the definition, how you guys see optimization coming from there. But I kind of wanted to kick this off with kind of your guys' story coming together. You guys have great chemistry on mic together. Has this been a long friendship that you guys have had, for a while, or is this something, how did you guys come together to start working together and start building everything that you're doing?
Yeah, actually, we don't like each other.
Do you want to tell the
story? All right, getting into the shit right away. Let's go.
But no, it's actually pretty cool how the dynamic worked. And actually, kind of speaking to our office space that we actually currently have right now, is how we met again. But before that, we actually went to church, and we actually didn't know each other that well. When we went to a church, and he had moved to Colorado Springs. He was going through chiropractic school at that time and headed out to Colorado Springs. And I didn't even know that. So, but I could see, it was, I guess, fate. But he came and bought a practice that now I've invested into as well. That's not too far away from our current office here in Tampa, Florida. And one day, one of his assistants said, "Hey, you should go check out this place." And my buddy owns it. It's just a co-working space. And so it's really cool. And so he was walking through, but we recognized each other like right off the bat. I had been working here, and he's like, "Dude, Matt." I'm like, "Alfie, what's going on?" And so we reconnected about probably, I think maybe a little over a year ago or so. Yeah. And we just hit it off and started kind of hanging out, and just saw some synergy in terms of our conversation and kind of where we're at in life and what we were working on. And I had brought up to him, I'm like, "Hey man, I'd really like to start a podcast." And so I think he just went straight cold on me once. Like, I'm like, "Hey, we're going to record." And then he didn't show up or something. No, he didn't do that. But I ended up following up with him again. I think he was like, "Dude, I'm super busy right now," but I followed up with him again. I'm like, "Look, man, I think this is a really good idea. I think it would really help your practice out. And then from a branding perspective, kind of get our name out there a little bit more." And so we kind of came together, but like through the process of this year and really investing into media and media strategy, and specifically our podcast, we really have just joined forces and come together and kind of seen the uniqueness of that. So we've actually grown to kind of get to know one another, I think, really, really well through the podcast, as well as bringing on guests. So it's been really, really cool. I don't know if you want to add anything, babe.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've just noticed there's just so many things that we like see eye to eye on, man. We train together all the time. So we probably train together 2-3 days a week at least. He invested in my chiropractic office and helped me kind of get some new things going with that. So that's been fantastic. So we're like, I'd say just really good friends, business partners. And then obviously the podcast is kind of like something we love doing. It's so fun, but also a way for us to just create a lot of value and educate others, which is our goal.
Yeah. It's interesting. I started a podcast with a former partner. That's how I got into all this work. Me and my former partner, we had a studio up here in upstate New York. And then during the pandemic, we realized we were kind of just chatting every day about stuff. And one of our coaches that worked for us was like, "Why don't you guys do a podcast?" And we're like, "Well, we really don't have much else to do." And it was kind of just talking shop for a bit, and then started just getting people on. Like, we had our coaches come on and just start chatting. And personally, I realized like this feels like a continuing education course personally for me. But also I realized, you get really so much gems from conversations. There's so much you can get from books and from, study and things like that, and even practice and application. But you really get deep into connection with other people and hearing their insights from not just their experience and the things that they've learned, but also just the stories, the struggles, the trials that go through. So that's why I really fell in love, with the podcast. So when I went out on my own, I was like, where do I feel like I enjoy the most in what I do? And it was always from conversing with people. But I got to remember, like, hosting with another person was much more challenging, for me. Was it always been like kind of an easy flow for you guys right off the bat, or have you talked about kind of the approach that you've done with the podcast as you've gone along?
I feel like it's always been like kind of like organic. Like and I was just thinking as you were saying that, I was like, there's so many times where I'm like, damn, I wish we had a mic on us right now. Cause we're getting into like deep conversations where we're talking about stuff that, other people could benefit from, or we're laying down some really good content. But yeah, I mean, I don't think so, man. It's always been like, hey, you want to take this one, or hey, you take that one. And we're pretty chilled with it. So yeah, I don't know if I felt any way that it's like been difficult, and I think we're still pretty early on too. So maybe down the line.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think pain comes. Honestly, I give a lot of it just being like a little bit more faith focused, and a lot of it being faith focused. And like we just kind of like pray and deliver through stuff. And so when God speaks and brings somebody into our lives to like either come on our podcast or whatever it might be, that's really, I think, really kind of what helps the ebbs and flows of life, and kind of the seasoning of allowing it to maybe sound a little bit more organic, instead of forcing things all the time. So I think that, that's kind of like the way we have approached even our business in terms of like how we're going to grow a brick and mortar location to kind of like media channels and outlets, and then ultimately a supplementation company that we're trying to get off the ground. So it's just one of those things that, when I prayed, I said value first, like value's my word of the year. I kind of like pick words of the year. And so I just really want to drive value. And what is that value? A lot of it is stemming from, optimization. I know that word has been radicalized a little bit in terms of like general media, like what is optimization? But, we try to keep it as our simplest form. How are we trying to optimize? Well, one of the main things is like, the first things is like, do you know your blood work? Have you gotten your blood work done? Right. And so we've taken a lot of our optimizers, that guys that we're coaching right now, and we want to understand their blood work. Hey, where are you at? Where's the baseline? Because without that data, we can't really get the feedback. And then also, what are small incremental changes you can make? But, the two measurables that we have is, do you exercise regularly, right? And is it incorporating resistance training? And then what is your nutrition load look like on a daily basis? So we look at your BMR, and then, if you're going way above that, it's like, dude, we need to dial you back a little bit, get you programmed in so you're building muscle and losing fat. So, optimization in a nutshell, we try to look at everything, but we not, for the people that are just naturally like learning and they want to get more involved, we try to keep it pretty simple. Let's get your blood work done. Let's see where you're at, and then dial in your nutrition. And, the long game is always to build that lean muscle mass.
Yeah, I love that. I think optimize has kind of been characterized as exclusivity. Like there's only a certain amount of people that like, oh, they're like that's optimized. Where when you really think of it, everybody at that point, even if they're at the beginning level, just doing the practical things and just getting the foundation down, that is optimization at that moment. And then it just builds from there. I want to dive into that more with you guys. But beforehand, I do want to know a little bit more of kind of your backstories, how you got into this. I always love hearing coaches and practitioners of what really inspired them to get into this field. So Alfred, I guess I'll start with you. Like what was like, what was the first kind of calling where you felt like, health and fitness was really important for you, which eventually led you into wanting to make it more of a vocation and really more of their calling in life?
Yeah, I'd say like my passion for it definitely started young. I was an athlete my whole life growing up. And then I was always this real skinny kid, real skinny and lanky. And so like getting into high school, like starting lift weights and seeing like muscle come on, And, you know, when you're in high school, bro, you put on muscle pretty quickly, and we're taking creatine.
If only we could go back to those days.
Right. I'm like, damn. But yeah, that's where it kind of started. And I was like, ooh, I like this. Like, I enjoy this. I was a pretty good lacrosse player in high school. I went to college to play as well. And it was at that point that I really started getting into like training as an athlete and high performance training. Whereas high school, it was kind of doing my own thing. And then it was probably halfway through. I was studying business at the time. And so my dad's a successful businessman and owns a very successful business here in Tampa. It was around that time, like sophomore year of college, where I kind of told him, I was like, I don't think I want to work with you. I think I want to, you know, pursue something in the fitness space, be a trainer, whatever it might be. And, you know, that was kind of a pivotal point for me, because that was like, all right, you're not going where everyone thought you were going. You're going a totally different route. And so, you know, big trajectory change. Anyway, I became a personal trainer midway through college, trained through college, loved that. And it was probably like after I graduated or maybe like senior year that I started kind of tailoring more towards like corrective exercise, you know, postural correction, fixing deficiencies and like functional patterns. And that was where I started pursuing like graduate school. I looked into PT school, and then had a buddy who was a chiro. He started kind of, you know, pushing chiro towards me, and I was not sure which one. I had enrolled or like got into this men's lacrosse league. It was like, you know, just club lax after college. Total grade 5 shoulder separation in a game. Like, I mean, just messed it up, man. I wasn't going to be able to use my arm again unless I had surgery. So had a surgery, did the rehab, ended up refracturing the collarbone, had a second surgery, and was just dealing with chronic pain for like a year. And I went and saw this chiro who did functional neurology. And it was like at that point that I was like, all right, this is legit. I need to learn this. So I started studying that. I went through chiropractic school, you know, graduated mid to end of 2019. That was when I moved to Colorado Springs, you know, started practicing out there. And then I moved back here to Tampa, where I'm from, and bought into a practice and just been doing it ever since. But my take, or like my philosophy, is like, I don't want someone to rely on me forever. I want to equip them with the tools that they can heal. I can help you, but I want you to ultimately get healthy and then learn how to prevent, you know, disease, illness, injury in the future.
Yeah. Beautiful. So
yeah.
Matt, I guess we'll shift to you. I've got some questions on that, but I'll let Matt go.
Cool. Good stuff. Yeah, for me, I mean, my journey was a little bit different. I actually, when I graduated from college, I was an athlete as well, pretty much my entire life. And I actually dealt like in my early 20s with a little bit of depression, because I felt like I didn't live up to the expectations that I wanted to. I always had a goal. My dad was a 2-sport athlete at the University of North Dakota, played on some legitimate teams. He actually was inducted in the North Dakota Hall of Fame. I think it was 2021 or something like that. We went out to the University of North Dakota. It was really, really cool. But, you know, my dream was always to kind of like be a little bit better than him. I grew up playing against him. He's like 6'7". I never really got his height, but I tried, you know, and it just didn't work out. So in college, I played a lot of intramural basketball and just lifted a lot of weights during that time. Actually, just to kind of curate the story a little bit, I was a super insecure kid in high school. Just like weird body deformity, I felt like, and I just like super, really, really insecure. But at 16, I got in the weight room for the first time and started lifting weights. And it probably impacted my jump shot a little bit, although I was a pretty good shooter. But I just loved being in the weight room. And it was just where I found my therapy. And it was gathering a little bit of confidence, building a little bit of muscle. And so that just led with me until I graduated from Oakland University. And then out of Oakland University, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I got my personal training certificate. So what I would do is I worked for I did a consulting for the Fortune 50 company, but in the mornings, I would train people. So I'd wake up at like 4:30 in the morning and train a few people. And then I would come, I would work. And then after work, I would train people during the week. And so I just loved being in the weight room and doing that. And so I did that for a period of about 3-4 years. And then we moved to Tampa, Florida, which then I got into real estate and kind of like got out of it for a little bit. And to be honest with you, I stopped like working out and doing various things. But it wasn't until I had kids. So I'm 38 now, but like at roughly around 30, I got into this like mindset of I want to optimize. I wanted like, what does that mean? Right. And then so I started getting into cold showers, and that was like the impetus. That cold shower was just like the impetus of like, oh, what's next? How can I teeter with this and teeter with that? And so
what was it about that cold shower? Like, was it the feeling that you got, or was it like the impact that it had later going into the day?
So the cold shower was a number of different things, and I treat it to it was more of a mindset thing that I was willing to go into a state of discomfort, and that's what I tell people is that it as much as the energy and the psychology or the things that you get out of it naturally from the exposure of cold water, because we cold plunge all the time now, but like I think it did more from a mindset perspective because I actually physically would go into cold water in a static state, right? So I wouldn't warm my body up and then go into cold water. I would be in a static state and like force myself. I remember I think he's like 6 now, my godson, but we went up to New Hampshire for his baptism, and I'm like, I was like, all right, I got to get under cold water, and it was like November, and cold water in New Hampshire is much different than you're coming out of those pipes is much different when there's snow on the ground. It's
northeast water is much different in the winter. Yeah.
And so I'm like, when I'm swinging through, I'm like, it's hitting the back of your neck. Cause the first thing that I would do is let it hit the back of my neck. I would just be breathing so hard, like just trying to get it down. Just to be under there for about a minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes is, obviously the goal. But it was the intention of like, I was willing to step into the uncomfortable. So then throughout that day, it's like, man, things became just a little bit easier. Right. And so that's really, I think the major change is that of why I started thinking that way. And why I was like, man, what else can I do now having kids in my life that I maybe can keep up with them a little bit better. And so for the period of like, we're talking 8 years now, I've built on just various things that one specifically being, HIIT training combined with weightlifting and just various things that I build into my repertoire. And then also being an entrepreneur, right? You go through some very shitty moments, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's like you have other people's, you're definitely like, you got to write a check at the end of the day to make sure that they're protecting their household. You have that just over you. So how am I dealing with that stress? So cold water has been a major thing, but as now I'm I added on building block after building block, and now at 38, supplementation, getting my microvitamins, my macros in place. What am I doing on a daily basis is very much a big thing and part of my repertoire. So, the story is just all encompassing and evolving still. And that's what I love about everyone is everyone, has a story.
Yeah.
And it's not where we begin, but where we end. So that's just a little bit about without going too much.
It is funny with cold immersion because it's got so popularized now, like really in like the last year or two. But I think it was like the 1800s. It was like that was what they would prescribe for melancholy for people. Like if they were like just down or just like kind of like that deep sadness.
Cool.
Yeah, they would just go that. Yeah, like cold water immersion. It's been around forever. It is always funny that some of these things that have now popularized things because Andrew Huberman said it, a couple different times. It's like, yeah, it's been around for forever on here, but it is. I think there is something to just that we can go into just cold water forever on that because I just do it because I know it's something I don't want to do in the morning. I have not wanted to do it once in the morning ever. But you still just jump in and do it. So it's just getting that hard thing done, throughout the day. I think there's all the physical benefits of it that you get, like the norepinephrine, all this type of different stuff. But just the fact that going in and just doing something hard right off the bat for the day, I think that might be the most powerful part of the whole practice in itself from there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What's going to be harder the rest of your day than that, right? I mean,
yeah, just exactly. It's like, eat that frog, Brian Tracy.
Eat that frog. Yeah.
Alfred, I wanted to ask you about the functional neurology, like with your injury that you said that was really the thing that benefited you the most. What was the things were you? Obviously you're probably working on stuff before it wasn't really working. What was it about the functional neurology that really seemed like it made the impact for you and was like the go-to?
So it was like, man, after the typical conventional route after you have, say, a surgery is you go to PT and the PT stretches you and does all this stuff. And I'm not knocking PT by any means. This it wasn't working for me. So when I had the injury, I don't know if it was from the injury or from the surgery, a nerve was actually severed in my shoulder, the suprascapular nerve that controls your infraspinatus muscle. So my infraspinatus muscle completely atrophied. To this day, I just have like a indentation in my shoulder where there's no muscle there because it's gone. So, my external rotation just isn't there on my right arm anymore. So there was something going on. Obviously, the pattern in my shoulders just was like leaning forward, and all the stretching in the world wasn't going to change that. So what needed to happen was I needed to get the nerves in the shoulder and really the connection between the nerve and the muscle, those alpha motor neurons, reset. And so that's what this therapy does. It's called Trigenics. It's really cool. It's the guy who founded it, based out of Canada. So actually, while I was in chiropractic school, I went up there a few times and got some certifications. I did like a shoulder course, a knee course, and then I think it was like a full spine course actually. And so it's a great adjunct for what I do chiropractic wise. It's a little bit more niched. It takes more of my time, so I don't do a ton of it anymore. And I've kind of faded away from treating too. I'm more of like the business operator nowadays. But yeah, it's awesome because your typical PNF stretching. I don't know if you're familiar with PNF stretching. Yeah, it's a compressive force on the muscle to like actually release the muscle fibers. This doesn't do that. This uses like a transitional across the muscle. So you're not pressing down, you're not occluding any nerves or blood vessels. You're creating just stimulation. And then the patient is an active participant. So, while I was doing it, for example, the doc would be going across my supraspinatus muscle and I'd be abducting my shoulder, or he'd be going on the subscap and I'd be pulling in, or the pec, whatever it might be. And so I'm activating the muscle with, like consciously while he's stimulating the muscle with his finger, and you're breathing through. And so there's these three things coming in. That's why they call it Trigenics. These three inputs coming into the movement to like wake it up or lengthen the muscle, or, just kind of like re-imbibe that muscle with life. And so it was basically like my shoulder just was dysfunctional. It wasn't frozen or anything, but it wasn't moving appropriately after that whole fiasco. But
did other people did you know there was the nerve issue before going into that, or was that not something even talked about?
I didn't realize it until probably like 5 months after I had my second shoulder surgery, and that we were doing PT, and it just kept getting worse. And I was like, all right, like this, I don't think this thing's coming back. And they tried Russian stim. We tried, needling it, all this stuff. And just, if the computer's not plugged into the wall and it dies, right? So that's essentially what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to quite a few people recently on neuro work and neurology, and it's still something I'm so like baseline on it, but it's just so fascinating. The body's a crazy place to live. That's what my coach always says, but with the neurology side, I'm always really fascinated by that. So I mean, you guys do a lot of work specifically with young dads, with optimization and stuff. And I love the 6 pillars that you have: fuel, movement, sleep, mind, work, and spirit. I mean, it's in your experience, maybe personally first, and then what you see with other people, what are the ones that you find people struggle with the most out of those 6? Is there one that kind of jumps out more than the other ones? Do you think it's just more of a combination of things going on? What do you think from that?
I feel like it's mind, honestly. And to me, that's probably the most important, but I just feel like a lot of people are just like kind of weak mindset, something gets a little hard and they give up, or something's, I can't fathom even accomplishing that. It's like you can do way more than you think you can if you just kind of grit down and work towards it, right? And I think people don't test themselves enough in that way.
Yeah, what I'm noticing too, it's 100% a mindset thing, and I think a lot of it really comes down to just a sense of discipline. I think we just lose so much discipline nowadays, specifically like obviously with social and the social feed. And I'll just give an example. It's just there's so many people, and I'll be going, I'm at the gym this morning. This is just case in point, like the example that I was trying to portray, is that, there's so many people that come into the gym, and it's like the intention, they go with a good intention, right? But they go in with their phone in their pocket, and as soon as they sit down on a machine, they got to grab their phone and look at their phone for like 4 minutes, right? And then it's like then you're not even getting an accelerated heart rate at that point. It's like you're not doing much, right? And so and you're surely not using enough resistance to accelerate your heart rate during that time frame, because you're grabbing your phone between the middle of the set. And so you just see this, and it's like, honestly, I think it's another pandemic, right? Of like people going to the gym with their phone. It's like they don't actually get a workout in. And so one of the big things as far as just it is a 100% a mindset, because Jim Quick always says it, when you move your body intentionally, like when you're accelerating, you're moving your mind. And
Mhm.
so, but you have to get into what we were talking about earlier, a state of discomfort. And exercise is exactly that. And that's what we promote more than anything. Like, we don't promote cold, even though we have infrared saunas and cold plunges at our
Sure.
clinic, right? It's not like we're promoting that as the end all be all. That is actually probably fast forward for like most people, from a recovery standpoint.
Fundamentals.
We want the fundamentals to be like, hey, what are we doing to get ourselves out of breath, right? What's it accelerating, getting into that zone 2, zone 3, with your heart rate, getting that accelerated, getting a little bit of discomfort so you can build on that. So for me, 100%, it's that mindset thing, because I think that really creates the flywheel of
Mhm.
everything. How am I digging into the spirit, mind, work, and all these things to like kind of come together cohesively? Because at one point, one's going to fall out. But if you have a strong mindset, okay, how do I pull back in
Mhm.
and layer down? So, but that is absolutely, people go in with the intention, like at the gym, it's like, come on, man, like get yourself out of breath. Like don't
Right.
bring your phone in there. Get out there to do work, and
Yeah.
that's what we promote.
Do you think people construe what having a strong mindset actually means? I've always been fascinated by this because I think, people think a strong mindset is like clearing the mind and like meditating, like sitting down for 20 minutes and being like calm and present versus I would view more mindset like that. Get one workout in without your phone. Like that's
Yes.
actually building a strong mindset. I've done this myself. Like, I use music on my phone if I'm working out. And I've had to come to a point where I have the Bluetooth speaker and then I have to take the phone out of the room, where I
Yeah.
have my home gym in because I've been doing it forever. I feel like I'm a disciplined person, but still there's a compulsion in there in between sets to just go in and, oh, you hear a buzz on there. Oh, I'm going to check my email. Well, if you're going to check your email, you're immediately going to check Instagram or you're going to check something else on
Yeah.
there. It's like, it's not well, I think we call it an addiction. I think it's more of a compulsion that comes
Totally.
in. But I think that, this term mindset, it's one of those other ones like optimization that I think gets thrown a lot around a lot. Like you need to have this dominant mindset before you take action of doing something versus I think it might be a more strong thing to actually do something of connecting something physical with something, mental, and that's just naturally going to build more of a mindset. Does that make sense?
For sure. One of the things that you even said, and I like being open and transparent and pretty vulnerable too. But like, I've been going through this season of like, dang, man, like, what's next? Like, how can I get in clarity? I think as an entrepreneur, you're always like, what's next? What's next? And I think one of the major like grounding tools for me is like reading. So like, I'll sit down and kind of like pause for a minute, read and disconnect, and then write down and like kind of journal things out. And so there's so many people that they'll go through life and they just don't like, they don't write what is on their mind and like kind of like in their spirit and their heart. And that was one thing for me. It's a non-negotiable for me to like always move my body, because I think that if I don't move my body, when those seasons come of like me kind of going into a little bit, like I saw myself in my mindset going into a little bit more like valley or that sullen state where I'm just like, man, I'm like, it's a little fatigued, feeling burnout. But then what's the number one, what's the non-negotiable? But then also, what is the other element in our flywheel that I can pull out? And I was like, when's the last time like I intentionally read? Because I was like trying to speed through books
Mhm.
and read through books and all these things. But I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna sit down and I'm gonna read, and then I'm gonna open up and I'm gonna write some things down because I haven't done that in a while, right?
Mhm.
And so that's part of, I think, establishing your non-negotiables is a big thing. One of the, for me, my coach always says you're gonna have to have three non-negotiables. You got to have a way to make money, you got to have a way to get yourself out of breath and work out, and then the other one is how you're connecting with people, because we're interrelational, right? So those are the non-negotiables. How am I connecting with people on a daily basis? How am I getting myself out of breath, like physically out of breath?
Mhm.
Um, and That's just, those are just some of the ways that I ground myself. But just this past weekend, I was around a bunch of other entrepreneurs at my church, and uh, it was the same thing. One guy, he's crushing it. And it was the same thing, man. I felt disconnected. I had to get back and kind of get grounded. And one of the big, my faith is a big thing. And that was one thing he exposed, is just like, all right, how do I just get grounded in that way? So when you're moving, if that's a non-negotiable and you're moving your body I can see where other things are going on in my flywheel to say, man, I need to tap into this one. And so I think that's a big thing. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah. I think mindset kind of ties in with like integrity too. Like when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And then when you don't, if no one else knows about it, then that's on you. Right. And you're the only one who knows that you didn't get up and go to the gym that day, or you didn't, eat how you're supposed to, or whatever it might be. Then I think that kind of dampens like your own self accountability. Right. And so that definitely ties in.
I think
community comes into that too. Just
sure. Yeah.
Community. That's what we're trying to like build too, is like that community piece.
Strength.
Yes. Strength in numbers. And the word you used there, Alfred, integrity, I thought is so powerful in there. And I talked about this, I remember, with Joel Cochran, he was on the podcast, where he said one of the biggest things that people struggle with more than anything, and where a coach really steps in, is building self-confidence. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, where does that come from then? And we talk about non-negotiables. I've used the example of setting standards versus expectations, and I think so many people have the expectations of the ceiling where they want to go. Like, these are all the things that I want to do and get to. Where if you set standards, I'm going to hold myself to this, that's your floor. And if you keep elevating your floor over and over again, you're going to have less and less shitty days. Even if it's not a great day, even if you don't get everything you need to done, but you still hold to your non-negotiables, you're still progressing at a better speed over and over again. And I think that of having that integrity, that naturally builds self-confidence. I've seen this with my own community, of how many times I did this as a coach early on, where if you like shoot for 5 days a week of training, oh, well, I got in 3. It's like, oh, well, still, good job. And I was like, well, you said you were going to do 5, you hit 3, you did 60%. That's failing in school. Like, like maybe that's good, but maybe either one, like, why did you miss the other 2 days? Or maybe you jumped too far of thinking what you could do, maybe set the non-negotiable at 3. And then I found the more people even just dial down their expectations and hit their standards, they continuously kept doing what they said they're going to do over and over again. So you naturally build this mindset up of, oh, if I set a goal for myself, now I'm in a momentum where now when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm like, I think that's one of the best examples of having self-confidence that I've heard. And I remember when I heard that from Joel, I was like, that's exactly where I'm at. And I think what you're talking about, having that integrity of doing what you said you're going to do, I think that fits right in the mix.
Yeah. And you got to be realistic with yourself. Everyone knows like where they're at, right? Or they should, that's kind of where we come in too, is like, hey, where are we at? Right. You're going from never exercising at all for the last 10 years. You're a couch potato. Now you want to work out 7 days a week, dude. Let's kind of reality check that a little bit. Let's start with 2 or 3 days a week. All right. Let's get you just moving. You know what I mean? Because then you don't go 7 days a week. Now you're like, damn, I failed. Like instantly mindset's negative. Mindset's going to be all over the place versus, dude, I went twice a week. Like I'm freaking killing it. Let's go. Like, and then, you start increasing it after that. So I think that's like the whole SMART goal thing. I think it's thrown around a lot, but the R is realistic, right? Your goals have to be realistic for where you're at.
Yeah. What do you think that is with people come in and they want to just jump it so fast into it? Do you think they're just in so much pain of being where they are that they want to just move it as fast as possible? Do you think it's just more naturally maybe just ignorance, where people just don't exactly know what is actually optimal for them at the time?
No, I got a perfect example of this, because we're one of them.
Impatience.
We literally
so what done now.
So get this, and this is why I like bringing it back home to myself and not like them, because you can break this apart in every single circumstance. So exercise, that is dialed in as a non-negotiable, right? But we're trying to get a website developed, right? And our website developers came with 16 different pages. And so we're like, oh shoot, we're trying to do the whole thing at once. And I'm like, dude, I am so overwhelmed right now with 16 different pages that we have to like look at. And so there was a guy that said the other day, we were working on a landing page. He's like, look, man, just do one thing at a time. Just do this one little thing. And I'm like, that's what we need to do for our webpage. Just like give us one page. Let us work on that
Right.
thing, and we'll go to the next one. And then we'll work on that one, and we'll go to the next one. So it's like, such as life, like, just how do you eat an elephant, right? Like,
Mhm.
you got to eat that thing one bite at a time. Eventually, if you live long enough, man, you ate the whole elephant.
Right. Yeah. How do you guys work on that with overwhelm? Like you said, especially as entrepreneurs too in this business, there's always something to do. Like there's always looking for the next thing there. So it's so easy to add just more on top of your plate, more focus on doing more rather than doing things well and get there. How do you guys work with that? I know, Matt, you spoke a bit about, reading intentionally and, kind of journaling on what you wrote. Alfred, I don't know if it's kind of similar to you on that, but do you have a specific process that you do to get yourself out of that overwhelmed feeling and get yourself more grounded of, okay, these are the things that I need to do just for this day, and I'm okay with that?
That's honestly, that's where this like partnership is so great. Cause he called me out the other day. He was like, don't do that right now. He was like, let's focus on what we're doing. Right. We're getting tons of momentum with our chiropractic business, getting momentum with this. He was like, we got a lot going on. Let's focus on that. He was like, you're going to go over here and try to start a weight loss business. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I just saw the shiny lights, dude. I don't know. I have like very intense ADHD. I always have, which like it works for me, and I know how to make it work. I have to like dial in on something for 20 minutes, and I can crush it, and then kind of rebalance, and then go after it, like the Pomodoro technique. But I also am very distractible in that way as well, and like let's pick this up. But so I think similar to him, like I've got to disconnect myself from the business a little bit to recenter. So stepping away, I like taking walks, honestly, like walks with either music or a podcast, or like binaural beats are my favorite thing in the world. I'll throw on like a binaural beat and like lay down, close my eyes, and my mind just starts going places, and I'll just kind of let it go. Just even 5 minutes, man. Like I won't necessarily fall asleep or anything, but you'll get into like that almost like pseudo sleep state, and it's a good reset for sure. And I think it's that you got to do that, man, or else you're going to end up wasting time.
Yeah. It's funny. I try to do binaural beats. I'll sleep in 2 minutes.
I usually fall asleep for sure. Yeah.
That's funny.
They're awesome though.
Yeah, I did it with them. I actually truly enjoy them, but I haven't made that a common practice for myself. One thing I have that's absolutely a non-negotiable. I always think of it. It's crazy. I take all of our coaching clients through this as well. I said, hey guys, like, what do you envision yourself dying like? So I was like, and then what age would you die? Like I have them like kind of go that far. And so because the likelihood is that maybe you're probably going to live to 85, like within your late 70s, all data proves that you're probably going to have a pretty good life. And it's going to be long, but I don't care if you're in your 30s. You still are preparing today as if you're going to be dying at 85, right? And so how are we reversing that 85-year-old body right now? And to be honest with you, I want to be freaking jacked when I'm 85. Like I want to be jacked. I want to be like still shredded. I want to have an 8-pack, a 6-pack still. Like I want to have these things because I want to feel really good. But one of the things that, I did a number of years ago, I think about 3 or 4 years ago at this point, was just like how important sleep is, and then beginning with the end in mind. The Stephen Covey talks a lot about this. John Maxwell talks a lot about it. But like beginning with that end in mind, and am I rushing the process? And one of the things that always brings me back home is, number one, I set a bedtime. So I go to bed there between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. I try to 9:30 is usually that hard time that I get down, but I try to not do any type of connectivity post 9 o'clock. And then I'm winding down, and I'll usually be asleep by 10 o'clock. Because I'm up then by usually 5. So it's like between that 9:30 to 5 window is when I wake up. But having that consistent bedtime has been a really good basis for me, because one of the things that I love is I love dictating the day and getting up before everybody else, because then I am able to be at this very restful state. I might already had a workout in, or I've read, and I have this very like peaceful state where I'm able to wake up my girls instead of my girls waking up me, or my wife waking up me. And so that's been really key. And the reason why is because like I go back to the 85-year-old self, right? What do I want my girls to look like? Like, what do I want their mindset to look like? Do I want them to feel rushed? Do I want them to feel, no, I'm trying to mitigate the risk where they feel successful and they feel like they can have the autonomy to live their life. And so I'm not saying I'm the best at being uber present, but I am pretty darn good at like coming back to the heart of gratitude, and really looking at 85, reversing that and say, if I had this uber successful life, am I trying to achieve where I'm like going to like all these events and I'm speaking, or is it that, yeah, I can do that, I can have that successful life, but then I also like, my girls knew I was present with them, uber present when it really mattered. Like
Mhm.
they're never going to be 8, 6, and 4 again, right?
Right.
And so those are just one of those things where like right now I know how I'm forming and shaping a soul. Um, and so as I do that, the I know that it's important that when I get to 85, these years were important. And so I try to like slow down, be like, yeah, I'm trying to make money, I'm trying to do all these things, but I'm also trying to make life simple. I'm definitely more present when life's a little bit more simple. And so that's why we even have some of the conversations we have. Are we trying to grab at something because we think it's the next best thing, or is it the right thing? And
Mhm.
so trust me, I've done some over the past couple of years. I've made some investments that I wish I took back. But at the end of the day, like I think that, somebody said the other day with age, the prize of aging is wisdom. And that really resonated with me because, man, I want to get wisdom as fast as possible. And I feel like I'm in this season of like presence is the number one thing, especially as I'm cultivating this soul for the long term. It's my
Yeah.
responsibility.
It's interesting because knowledge you can speed up by just getting a bunch more shit. Wisdom has no timetable that you can control, right? It's like you got to go through the experience of it.
That's right.
I love it. You brought up Stephen Covey's Seven Habits is the book I've reread more than any other book in there. And I went into a phase last year where I didn't read really anything new. I just reread things that I read before that had an impact on me. And I believe it's in habit 2 with begin with the end in mind. He actually has people go through and like write out your eulogy. Like you are going to get there one day. Like you are going to go to that spot. How do you want people to perceive you? Like what would you want, to say? And you've kind of did it at 85, which I think is really powerful, of just having that connection, that reality that, yeah, time is moving in that direction. Like you are going to be there at one point. I remember I had this conversation with somebody during the pandemic when we were doing classes. And, people fell off during that time and they were going through tough times, depression, kind of worry. And, this one guy I remember, we were having classes and he kept saying he was going to come, like, I'm going to come to this class or I'm going to jump on the live. And, then he never showed up and he like never got there. And I remember I had this conversation with him and be like, dude, one day this is going to end. Like we are going to be back in the studio. We are going to be back in our community that we had before. Cause he kept talking about, I miss what we did before and all this type of stuff. And I was like, I totally get it, but you're going to be at that point where it's going to be there again. And you're going to have one of two ways you're going to feel. Either one, you're going to be super pumped that you kept moving and kept working during this time and feel really good when you first step back into the studio. Or two, you're going to be fucking really pissed off at yourself that you just let this whole time go and you're going to feel like garbage going back in. You have those two options if you're going to come back into the studio. And that kept in my mind a lot of just always looking ahead in that time of like, where do I want to be when this time comes up? But when you go through that exercise with people in your guys' space, how is that perceived by people? It's not an easy thing sometimes to bring up with people. And sometimes people do, oh, I just want to get in and just start doing stuff. Like to step back and have them go through this practice. What's the perception and what's the feedback that you get from people from this?
I think it's honestly, I think it's like the hard truth that people need to hear that too many, what I've learned just in my career is like too many doctors, practitioners aren't serving people when they don't tell them the hard truth. Like someone comes in and their spine is really bad. I say, hey, this is pretty bad. Like this needs work right now, or this is going to get worse. If I baby it, I'm like, well, you might have a little bit of time, blah, blah, blah. I'm not helping them at all. Now they're going to be like, well, it's not a big deal. I didn't create any urgency for them to take care of it or give a shit. They're going to leave and it's probably going to get worse and they're going to be in more pain. And then it's harder to fix at that point. And it's the same thing with everything. It's easier to get in shape today than it will be tomorrow. The older you get, the harder it gets, right? We know that preserving muscle takes time and it's building it is harder when you're older. It requires more protein intake, all that stuff, right? So I think when we say it, like maybe I'm a little bit more than him, a little bit more hard on him. And I'm like, guys, like everything you do today is building your 85-year-old body, 100%. Like everything you put into your mouth, like think of it like that. Every time you do work out or don't work out is going to be setting the stage for how your body transitions to that state. Now, do you want to build an 85-year-old body that's made out of mashed potatoes and friggin' cheese and, you know, you look like a fluffy whatever? Or do you want to be chiseled up and, you know, you don't have to have an 8-pack, but be fit and be able to go run around with your grandkids at 85? Like that is rare. And like, I think to be that rare person would be the goal.
Yeah.
I think that's the standard we're really trying to set too. It's like, that is a life that, you know, is achievable and that everyone can live. But presence is a big thing, right? Creating that, what you could said, as far as eliminating those expectations, start creating standards for yourself. Like, what is the standard? And like, why isn't that people can't be educated on like food and the proper consumption of it? Like, there should be a healthy way, right? This shouldn't be a snack driven society, because that's ultimately what packs weight. Snacks and drinking pack on weight on people. And that's what ultimately like doesn't preserve them for the long term. So then some guy was even saying this, let me answer your question. The feedback that we've gotten from the guys of like, go into that ended mindset, the 85-year-old self reverse engineer, is they've had to really think about their why in life. They've had like, what's their why? Is their why big enough? Because if their why isn't big enough, hands down, there's been a couple guys that like, they have a really, really soft why. And to be honest with you, it's kind of like making me like, all right, we got to reach out to a couple of these guys, because like their why, you know, just hearing them, it's a little soft, you know?
Like, yeah, we'll like fire them.
And
like,
so
like, just don't come back.
it's when your why isn't big enough, it's like, man, you gotta that eventually that's not going to be built for like kind of long term up to get you to that. So, but then the guys that think, oh man, I am not invincible. Like, you know, the reality is that day will come. And if I'm not going to be prepared for it, and then one of our things is that we, you know, for what I've actually just kind of came through the evolution of this year, which is pretty interesting, right? Is that like life, no matter where you're at in life, it's a game of reminding. You need to be reminded so often. You reading books that you've already read, like books hit no matter differently, no matter what season of life you're in. And it's better to pick out 5 to 7 of them. I'm doing the same thing right now, is rereading a bunch of books, because I'm like, oh, this one hits a little bit differently this time. So I don't need to like hear an insane amount of voice. I was a guy that read like 50, 60 books a year, and I was just going through them, and I'll be like, oh, this one's good. And I'd post it on Instagram, but I'm like, how much did I draw out of that book? And so when you have 5 to 7 books that you just dive into, and then it hits at different seasons of life, and I'm like, dude, I've read this 4 times now and get more and more out of it. You know, like, you know, the Bible's the pinnacle for me. And then, but there's so many other books that people have taken the time to write, and you're like, wow, thank you so much for like just taking the time to this, so that I can, Stephen Covey, one of them, right? So anyways, I think a lot has come out of that, but like the why is so imperative. And then every time we talk, I'm like, guys, you're going to give us our update of like how much weight you've lost, how much, you know, muscle you gained, how you're working against your nutritional load, all these things. But like, you're starting with your why, because you need to be reminded every single time we talk of like actually what that is, because that needs to stay consistent, and it might change a little bit throughout the years, and that's okay. But like, you still need to know the why until the day you die, you know? So.
And it needs to be super clear, and like you should like be able to have it right off the tip of your tongue. The more you practice it, just like anything, it's, you know, something with like substance of books, as you said there, Matt. It's like, you think of it like nutrition, like you run through 50, 60 books. It's like snacks you're eating all the time. You're just having a different snack, versus if you have a nutritious meal. Well, if you keep eating that over and over again, you're going to get the consumption of it like over and over. So some things have more nutritional value of knowledge versus another. But Alfred, what you said there about just being honest with people, I think is just so powerful. And I think as coaches, it's very easy to tiptoe around stuff. We want to be nice people. You don't want to hurt people's feelings and stuff. But as coaches, like, our job is to give you the real shit, like give you the scoop of like, this is where you're at right now. And I remember when Aram Gregorian was on my podcast, we had a deep conversation about that, of just being just very frank with people. Like if you're doing it in the text of love, where it's like, I care about you, like I care to have it, because nobody else is telling them anything about this. It's like everybody in the world is like, we're skating around a lot of things with conversations. And that's why I think we're in many ways where we are right now in so many different realms. That's a whole nother podcast that we can dive into right there. But yeah, it's like just being just honest with people about where they are. They're going to come back and they're going to respect that.
Right. We live in a society where everyone is offended by everything. And so when you get offended, that's you internalizing something, right? Nobody has control over your emotions but you. So if somebody says something and it offends you, you have to figure out why. And so if we're coaching somebody and I say something that's like, hey bro, you didn't do 3 workouts last week. What's going on? Like, and they take like offense on that. It's like, well, you need to figure out why you're not doing the stuff we said we were going to do. This is an agreement between us. I said I was going to give you the layout. I said I was going to give you the foundation, the protocol. You got to do it, right? And so like, that's not me being a dick. That's not about me being hard. That's me just saying like, I know you're better than that, and that's my job, right? It's to like elevate you. So I think people honestly need to be offended a little bit. It's like within reason. Like,
that's what we're going to title this here. You need to be offended on that. Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Matt, Alfred, you guys, as I said at the beginning here, I think you guys are doing really good stuff with Full Fueled. Being able to connect with you and to have this conversation, I'm really grateful. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having us on, brother.
No doubt. Yeah. So if people want to check out more of the work that you guys are doing with the podcast, with Nutritious, everything that you do, what's the best place that we can direct them?
Yeah, so we have we're obviously on YouTube, Spotify, every channel that you want to for our podcast if you want to consume things there. And then we got this like kind of cool thing running right now that we'd love for you to be part of, Mike. So I'm at human.optimizer, and then he's at Full Fuel Doc on Instagram. But we have this new page called at Jack Dad Club. And so we're just trying to make every dad a Jack Dad. So we got this club that we're created, and it's just, it's the Jack Dad Club. We're really passionate about that. And so it kind of falls within our Optimizers program and our coaching program. But if anyone wants to follow us there, we post a lot of workouts and various things that we're doing. But it's at Jack Dad Club.
And then within a month, we should have fullfuel.com up and running. So that's like what we're alluding to. We're just finishing up the finishing touches on the pages. So,
I love it, guys. I love it. All right.
To be on that. Yeah.
Yep. We'll put those all in the show notes. So, guys, thank you so much again. Listeners, go follow Matt and Alfred. Check it out, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right. Peace.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait. Go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.